Imagine waking up and everything is silent.
Silent.
I mean, eerily silent.
Right.
Like all the normal sounds of life just gone. No birds, no insects, nothing. Just complete stillness.
Hmm.
And that's exactly what happened in a village in Cameroon back in 1986.
Oh, yeah. Lake Nyos. That's a chilling story.
It really is. And we're going to deep dive into it today. Learn about what caused this sudden silence and explore the experiences of the people who lived through it.
So we're talking about a natural disaster.
Yeah, a really strange one. Thousands of people and animals died almost instantly, and the cause was completely invisible.
Invisible. That's creepy. Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's hear about it.
So our main source for this deep dive is a YouTube video featuring first-hand accounts from two survivors, Ephraim and Joseph. Their stories paint a haunting picture of that fateful day.
It's always powerful to hear about events like this from the people who experienced them firsthand. It adds a whole other dimension to the scientific explanations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's start with Ephraim. He wakes up on August 21st, 1986, feeling a bit disoriented. He's got this vague memory of a loud booming sound, but he can't quite recall what happened the night before.
A loud sound? You think that could be a clue?
Definitely. It suggests something powerful and sudden happened right before the village went quiet. But as Ephraim looks around, he doesn't see any signs of a storm or anything else that could explain the noise. It's a clear morning, and the ground is dry.
So no explanation for the sound and then this unsettling silence. I can see why he'd be feeling uneasy.
Totally. And that silence is what really gets to him.
Okay.
It's not just quiet. It's the absence of life itself. No birds singing, no dogs barking, not even the rustle of leaves. Just this heavy, oppressive stillness.
Wow, it's like nature itself just took a pause.
Yeah, it's a really chilling detail. So, driven by this growing sense of unease, Ephraim starts walking down towards the village, which is situated near a lake at the bottom of a valley. And it's on his way there that he makes his first horrifying discovery.
Oh no, what does he find?
A woman frantically trying to wake up her family, but they're all dead. She's in complete shock, just tearing at her clothes and wailing in grief.
God, that's awful. It's like something out of a nightmare.
And as Ephraim gets closer to the village, the scene just gets more and more horrific. Bodies everywhere. Men, women, children, livestock, all just lying there lifeless.
Just dropped dead where they stood.
Exactly. No wounds, no signs of struggle, just a sudden and inexplicable death. He even finds a man slumped over his motorcycle, dead in mid-ride.
It's like life just instantly stopped for everyone.
And then it gets even stranger. Ephraim sees a father and son walking towards the forest. Their eyes are wide open, but they seem to be in some kind of trance.
In a trance? What do you mean?
They're not responding to anything. Ephraim calls out to them, but they don't react. They just keep walking like they're being pulled by some unseen force.
That's so eerie. It's like their bodies are moving, but their minds are somewhere else.
It's a detail that really adds to the mystery of it all. Like, what exactly happened to these people? Did everyone experience death in the same way?
So many questions. And it sounds like we're dealing with something far beyond your average natural disaster. It's like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. You know, some invisible force just wiping out a whole village.
It really does feel like science fiction. And as we'll see, the science behind this event is almost as strange as the fictional stuff.
Oh, I can't wait to hear about that. But first, I need to know what happened to Ephraim. Did he find any answers in that village?
Well, he does come across another survivor, a man named Joseph.
So he wasn't alone. Thank God for that.
Yeah, it must have been incredibly isolating to be in the middle of all that death and silence with no one to turn to. But Joseph's story adds a whole other layer of complexity to this event.
Oh, how so?
Because, like Ephraim, he also remembers hearing that loud booming sound before losing consciousness. And when he wakes up, he finds his village in the same horrifying state, his daughter dead in her bed, in eerie silence everywhere.
Two separate people both remembering that same sound right before the tragedy. I mean, that can't be a coincidence, right?
It really points to that sound being connected to whatever caused this mass death. And Joseph's actions after waking up, I mean, they really show the human side of this disaster.
What did he do?
He jumps on his motorcycle and just races to a neighboring village, desperately trying to get help.
Oh, man. I can't even imagine trying to explain what he'd just seen. How do you even begin to describe something like that?
I know, right? It must have been incredibly difficult to put into words. The chaos, the terror, the sheer incomprehensibility of it all.
Plus, think about the people he was telling it to. They had no idea what had just happened. They probably didn't even believe him at first.
Yeah, he likely encountered a lot of disbelief and confusion.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just too horrific, too bizarre to comprehend. And that's where the scientists enter the picture.
Ah, so they finally bring in some experts to figure out this mystery.
Exactly. A few days later, two American scientists, Joseph Devine and Harold Sigurdsson, they arrive at the village drawn by these reports of a completely inexplicable tragedy.
So these guys, they were like detectives trying to solve a scientific whodunit.
I like that analogy. And what's even more interesting is that these scientists had already been researching a smaller, eerily similar event that happened at another lake in Cameroon just a couple of years earlier.
Really? Another lake? What are the chances?
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
That incident, it only claimed 37 lives, but it had a lot of the same hallmarks as the Lake Nyos tragedy. The sudden mass death, no signs of struggle, and a mysterious cause.
So it was like a premonition, a warning sign that something bigger was coming.
Exactly. And it gave Devine and Sigurdsson a starting point for their investigation. They already had a working hypothesis, something to guide their research.
So what was their theory? What did they think caused these deaths?
Well, they suspected an invisible killer. Something silent, odorless, and capable of suffocating entire populations without a trace.
Invisible. That's even creepier than I thought. What could possibly do that?
Their theory focused on a unique characteristic of both lakes. They're what are known as volcanic lakes, formed in the craters of dormant volcanoes.
Volcanic lakes. Okay, that makes sense. But I still don't see how a lake could silently kill thousands of people.
Well, here's the thing. Volcanic lakes, even though they might look peaceful on the surface, they can actually hide a dangerous secret.
Oh, really? And what's that?
Massive amounts of carbon dioxide gas trapped deep in their waters.
Wait, so these lakes are like giant bottles of soda just waiting to explode.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Over time, this CO2 can build up to really dangerous levels. And Devine and Sigurdsson believe that some event, maybe a landslide or a minor volcanic eruption, triggered a sudden release of that gas from the lake bed.
So this invisible cloud of CO2 just erupted from the lake and blanketed the entire village.
Exactly. And because CO2 is heavier than air, it would have stayed close to the ground, silently suffocating anyone and anything in its path.
And that explains why there were no marks on the bodies. They just inhaled this toxic gas and died without even realizing what was happening.
Precisely. And to confirm their suspicions, Devine and Sigurdsson collected water samples from Lake Nyos.
What did they find?
Incredibly high concentrations of CO2, way beyond safe levels. Their findings strongly supported their theory that a massive release of this gas was the cause of the tragedy.
Wow. So this idyllic lake, it was actually a ticking time bomb just waiting to go off?
And unfortunately, the people living nearby, they had no idea about the danger lurking beneath the surface.
It's hard to fathom living in a place where such a tragedy occurred. But what's even more surprising is that many of the survivors, they actually returned to live near Lake Nyos.
Really, after experiencing something so traumatic, I can't imagine wanting to go back.
It might seem counterintuitive, but there's a deep connection between people and their land. For those who lived around Lake Nyos, it was more than just a location. It was their home, their livelihood, their history.
Home is where the heart is, even when it's a place that's brought so much pain.
Exactly. There's a pull towards familiarity, a sense of belonging that draws people back to the places they know, even after a devastating event like this.
It makes you wonder, though, if there's also an element of denial there. A subconscious belief that something so terrible couldn't possibly happen again in the same place.
That's certainly possible. But the scientists weren't willing to take that risk. They knew that the potential for another gas release was still there.
So what did they do to prevent a repeat of the tragedy?
They developed a plan to degas the lake. Essentially, they installed pipes to slowly release the CO2 buildup from the bottom of the lake.
Giga, so like a giant straw sucking up the bad stuff.
Kind of. It's like a pressure release valve for the lake, allowing the gas to escape gradually and safely, instead of building up to dangerous levels.
That's incredible. Human ingenuity at work trying to tame the forces of nature.
Exactly. And this degassing project, it's still ongoing today. It's a testament to the dedication of scientists and engineers to protect people from future harm.
It's a reminder that we don't have to just accept natural disasters as inevitable. With scientific knowledge and proactive measures, we can mitigate risks and save lives.
Absolutely. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the mystery of Lake Nyos, what are some key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, for me, it's a powerful reminder that nature can be both beautiful and deadly. And sometimes the most dangerous threats are the ones we can't even see.
It also highlights the crucial role of scientific investigation. Without the expertise of researchers like Devine and Sigurdsson, we might never have understood the cause of this tragedy and wouldn't be able to prevent future ones.
And finally, it's a story about resilience. The people who survived this horrific event, they didn't let it break them. They rebuilt their lives and found a way to move forward.
It's a testament to the strength of the human spirit. So here's a final thought for our listeners. What other invisible dangers might be lurking in the world around us? And what can we do to learn from events like the Lake Nyos disaster and better protect ourselves and our communities? The more we understand about the forces of nature, the better equipped we'll be to face them.
It's a call to stay curious, keep learning, and never underestimate the power of both nature and human ingenuity.
On that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into Lake Nyos. Thanks for joining us.